excited that we are going to be live tonight or today, depending on where you are in the world. And as we are preparing in the live session, it's not quite here yet, but for anybody watching the replay, here we are, we're live. And I am so excited to be here with Karren Jensen. Karren is an amazing business leader. She is the CEO and co-founder of Conductor Software, and she helps leaders address the causes of workplace disease. And I love that because what you're doing is you are allowing people to have people first, but also have business performance. And I think that's amazing. And I just got to do a shout out about that Boeing Aerospace Accelerator program in 2023, right? It was, really giving you accolades about the digital solution of supporting the demands and challenges of the modern workplace. And that's a big deal. Boeing's a big deal. So a little pat on Karren's back, right? And I'm
Thank
Kim Woods. I am Master Astrologer and award-winning business strategist. And we are here to talk about how to position you to have significant influences on how your business operates intelligently now and in the future. We're going to talk about what leadership is all like happening now. Karren, that's your sweet spot, right? And then we're going to
you.
talk about AI, and we're going to talk about the disruption of AI. We're going to talk about different intelligence. We're going to talk about tools and takeaways. So, Karren, paint us a picture of the landscape of leadership even before AI has come on board.
Yeah, well, I think yes, it's look, leadership is an evolving space. It has to be. We need to learn, we need to grow. It's very experiential. And, I think any leader today recognizes there is vast difference between the different generations and the way that we think. And we understand it from a marketing perspective. We target marketing to hit generations and different groups. But that hasn't really ever come into business and leadership and our workforce. So when we start to look at it through that lens and you start to understand we have a diverse range of people in any organization from the perspective of our cognitive functioning, from our experiences. Like we all come with something different. So leadership has really been about trying to understand that and how do we influence and motivate people so that we can actually perform well. Because at the end of the day, that's the whole thing about business. We got to perform. Otherwise, there's no business.
But also too, I think personally too, because if you're underperforming, like if you're not doing the right job. If like maybe the business mission is over here and you might be misaligned, that's gonna create some dissatisfaction. It's going to create some disconnect, right? So I think even from a personal perspective, each person when they take a job, they're like, okay, this is where I am right now. I'm going to be part of something bigger than I, right? And so that's important. And, I just look at the landscape and I look at remote teams and I just say, like, adding to the complexity of, we didn't get ourselves sorted in leadership, I don't think, in a very, solid way. And then we added more technology, with the birth of the internet at the beginning of the century. And then, now we've got like we could travel many distances. So we brought the world together and we could just meet people everywhere. And then all of a sudden pandemic, no, we're not meeting anybody anywhere. Oh, we have all this workspace, we're not using it at all. We're only going to be hybrid or not even, and all the things. And so talk about confusing.
Yeah,
Right?
and that's why I talk about this workplace dis-ease. So I'm not talking about diseases
Yep.
which are, in the long term, when you think of holistic thinking, yes, it can end up in diseases, but this
Yeah.
dis-ease, it's growing rapidly. There is this increasing dissatisfaction and going, no, I don't want the workplace that used to be like, I don't want to work the way we used to work. And
Right.
that's what leaders really, they know it, they feel it, they're experiencing it. They're dealing with the lack of staff because we have such high turnover and a really tight labor market, but they don't know how to work through it. They're not understanding that this is connected and they have knowledge and tools at their fingertips that they can actually tap into this. And so I think it's a very exciting time for us to finally start getting change in workplace. And because the practices that got us here over the past 100 years aren't going to help businesses to thrive into the future.
Right.
And that's what leaders need to be really on top of.
Which I loved, you know, because of course we prepared for this talk, right? So I loved when you said that. And I loved when you could, like, again, I just kept thinking, paint a picture. Like, think about 100 years ago, think about the world, you know, think about we weren't hopping on planes. We weren't, I'm going to leave the computer out just for a handful of minutes, right? Like, we weren't just, everybody didn't have a car or vehicle. Like, transportation was completely different. Like, the suburban sprawl, at least here in America, hadn't happened yet,
Yeah.
So when you kind of like, put yourself back and you say, wow, when you think of Model T Fords were coming out and then the assembly line and then, how we worked, people were different. The expectations were different. The availability of information and access was different. And then it feels to me, it's just like sped way up, at the end of the last century, the beginning of this century, it was just like whoosh, with technology innovation.
And I think that technology and innovation and is core to it, because it's only been in like the last 30 odd years that neuroscience, we've had the technology to go into, understand, how do our brains really work? Like 30 years ago, we thought the brain was fixed.
Right.
Once you got to adulthood, you were done. That's it. You've learnt and all the behaviors are there. Well, we've learnt that's not true. There is so much more that we continue to learn. And it's really important that we bring this information into the business world so they can capitalize on it and better understand what does it take to actually help people to perform better. And what we're finding is everything that we thought drove performance and productivity is not sufficient. And in fact, it acts actually a demotivator.
Right.
So
Which, and this is even before we've added more disruption, right? So before we get to the AI disruption, I do
yes.
just want to continue to like ground us in the conversation, because
Yeah.
my most excitement is when we start talking about the different intelligences, right? Because I honestly feel that artificial intelligence has almost like it's subsumed that word intelligence, right? So I'm really glad that we're going to talk about those different ways, because the appreciation of those helps AI just slip in, right? Like, because that's really what I think. I mean, we've got this first blush of everybody's so excited about it. It's new. It's, anything new is sexy and cool. And, you can kind of see some things. And then you get into the reality of like, oh, I need to build another whole like cloud storage facility. And oh, I need to have rules around this. And we'll get into that. But before we do, I do need to do my job too. I need to talk about the stars, right? Like, I need to talk about
And
like,
that was so fascinating to me, is like, yeah, I can look back at the history and then you and I talking about that, just going, oh my God, like that's amazing.
yeah,
That's
right. So
mind blowing.
mind blowing, right? So when we talk about those, literally the stars will give the indication first. So when I'm talking to business owners, I'm often talking about like there's the layer of the stars, that's your first indicator, and then the economic indicators will come in, and then the business, industries and the solutions and trends come in. So it's fascinating. Like, if no one needs to be an astrologer, all you need to do is just kind of hear some things with some dates, and you can get the appreciation of like, huh, that's kind of fascinating, right? Because we had a major star configuration in right around 2000 that ended in 2020, and then we have another one starting, and you can see like, wow, that really birthed the evidence of what was happening in the technical world, like in the 60s and the 90s, because these stars were literally configured together. And so you could see, if you were following like early 60s, oh, computers, early 90s, oh, internet, oh, late 90s, there's the adoption of it. It's becoming real. 2000, everybody's using it. It's really in the world now. 2010, smartphones. Hello, we're not going to use a phone to talk. Good Lord, why would we want to use a phone to talk, right? We're going to use it to do a million other things, right? And that's going to change everything. The way that social media has been born. And I'm not going to bore people with the exact planets and their configurations. I'm just saying that the dates that you can literally match up invention, like star invention, star invention, star invention. And what's really important right now is we are in a unprecedented star configuration for the next few years, that the sweeping technologies and discoveries and innovations and inventions are going to be, our minds cannot wrap around them. And on one hand, we're like, yay, let's address climate change, right? like let's fix some of the problems that we have. And on the other hand, it's like, how are we going to keep up? Like, how are we going to be able to physically construct enough terra firma and like I don't even know, like pathways and connections and whatnot, so we can absorb and integrate those changes. It's a big
Yeah.
deal.
My mind's always blown when you start to talk about this. I'm just it's going off on so many different tangents, but I think so. Tell me, so let's talk about what's really going to happen here. I think that's going to be important for everybody listening. It's all good and well to talk about the planets and that we can see this.
Right.
What does that mean for the coming few years? And like, because I can see it from the business perspective and the world, and going back, and what I see and what we spoke about previously was the masculine and feminine energies. And for people who don't know me, I was in worked in the natural health therapies many years ago, and we they spoke a lot about that. They spoke a
Mhm.
lot about these energies. It's not about male against female. It's just, masculine is very power driven. It's looking for success. It's very much about control. Feminine energies are about connection,
Right.
collaboration, working together. And so that was the start of my journey into bringing Conductor, is that I was looking for, how do we bring this into business? How do we actually make businesses more connected, more collaborative, work in an easier, more accepting and open way, apart from this power and control and drive, which I could already see as women were coming into the workforce, didn't align with how we wanted to work. It's not how we work. So,
Right.
30 years on, 35 years on, you can see how this is starting to play out. So for me, I expect, and I know this is what's happening in the workforce now, post-COVID. It was a real wake-up moment for people going, you know what, I'm sick of my company not really caring about me. All they want is me to perform. They want to drive me harder. They want more revenue. I want more balance.
Hmm.
I actually want to know that I matter, that you've got my back, you're going to support me, you're going to help me, and that we're in this together. Is
Yeah.
that what you see coming through as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because we went through some major challenges in like 2012 to 2015 that were very uncomfortable, that were destabilizing, but the end result was for like breaking free and kind of like allowing us to make change and accept change. Whether people did or not, that's one thing. Then here came 2020, right? Massive change. So when I was looking at that in, the years coming up to 2020, I had said to everyone, when we hit 2020, we will not be the same. The world will never be the same again. I was saying this, a year before, right? So here we have it. Yes, it's true, right? So we had this, the planets predicted it, right? And we had this major shift. And the beauty of 2020 was that people did reprioritize. That was the energy of it. It was like, set your priorities. What is really important to you? What do you truly value? And I had, stated that, so again, the planets were indicating that. So after you come out of that, things tend to settle down, right? Because the brain doesn't want to accept change. Like you know more about this than I do, right? So it's afraid of it. Anytime there's something unfamiliar or it's growth oriented, which is unfamiliar, the brain's like, I'm going to protect you. I can only deal with what's familiar. So no. So we tend to talk ourselves out of it. So you saw that happening, like a softening of things in 2021, 22, 23, not from a great resignation, great reshuffle, but where has everybody ended up, right? So we're seeing more of a wrangling now. 2024 is very much an edgy year. It is like we've hollowed ourselves at the core. We're swinging the pendulum one way, we're swinging the pendulum the other way. We're not really settled. I am telling all my clients to settle. I am telling them all to put like major construct, terra firma, stability, get the foundation laid, make sure that you are in alignment with what's true for you, because 2025 is going to come and it's very fiery. It's very ignition driven. So that's exciting for new discoveries, right? Like when we think about it, it's like all of a sudden the light bulb turns on and we have all these ideas, and yet it's going to feel really busy. It's going to feel destabilizing. It's going to feel in some cases exhausting and like burning out. So when you come into that being filled, and I'm saying this for businesses too, right? So we can say personally, but we can say as a business, if you're looking at your weaker areas, shore them up. If you know you need to optimize, go ahead and do it. It's going to be infinitely easier to do things in 2024. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait till 26, 27, or 28. So there's just this period of time where things are going to be, I'm calling it Captain Chaos. I'm just calling it because things are going to be moving so fast. You're not going to really know. You're going to feel like you're juggling a million plates. And for leaders to hear that, they may just turn us off right now, right? Because they're already
No
doing
more.
too much, right?
Yeah.
They're already doing way too much. This is why we're talking, to be able to just say, okay, with more disruption, what does your world look like in that from a leadership perspective?
Yeah. And I think this is the great opportunity. Like, it's really going to force leaders, what I'm hearing, is going to force leaders to have to lead in a different way. And,
Yeah,
the work that we've been doing is helping leaders to come to that. And as you said, change is hard. Like, they've been so accustomed to having to manage and keep control. What I'm hearing is that it's going to be it is really important that they take on board and learn. We need to rebuild trust in organizations.
yes,
Leaders can't be responsible for everything. So, when you have leaders who have this strong demand to control and manage everything, like called micromanaging,
right.
we're seeing their teams no longer wanting to be a part of that. They're actually leaving those environments. They're wanting to lean in. They're wanting to play a bigger role. So that's actually the key, is helping leaders to take that change on board and build trust with their staff, because your staff have got this. Your people have got this. They just need to know that you've got them and you're going to be in it together. So that more
Yes,
collaborative approach is that we're in this together. Let's nut it out and we'll get through it. And I think if they don't learn how to do that, those are the companies that are really going to struggle with this.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because the last time, I will name a planet and I'll name a sign, right? So I will. Because Pluto in Aquarius just entered this last year. It's been flirting in and out. It's going to stay in Aquarius as of November and be there for 20 years. That's why I'm talking about 2024 setting you up for the next 20 years. The last time Pluto was in Aquarius was the time of the American Revolution and the French Revolution. So think about that. There was hierarchical structure that was not working because it was unequal. So what ends up happening is Pluto comes in and just destroys everything, just dissolves everything, just brings everything up to the surface. So that's why in the last few years, there's been so many stories that are uncomfortable. It's like, I didn't know that this person was doing that. I didn't know that that was happening. I didn't know this company was doing this and whatever. And what's the response been? Well, we have cancel culture. We have, like there's just absolutely no, we are not going to take that. Again, what are our priorities? Like, how have we chosen to live with our values, or are we being swept up, just kind of by the trends in the marketplace? That's up to the person to decide. When you look at the flattening, now I don't believe in a totally flat, organization. You don't either. I mean, there's got to be some sort of flow, right? So there's got to be some micro, like tiger teams or focus groups, or something that you can band together, because we weren't brought here on earth to be by ourselves. We are,
No,
right. We are connected naturally. Like, we naturally actually want connection. Like, if you look at, trends in depression and anxiety, it's because we're disconnected. So bringing teams further together, bringing people further together, organizations are a beautiful, they already have all the things set up to be able to do that. They have a shared mission, maybe, hopefully they have a shared vision. They've got values, they've got construct. It's such a natural community within it. Wouldn't it be great if it could act like one?
and I think act is the key word here. Like, when we deal with, when we work with clients around safety, and it's really important to psychological safety, it's really important to just clarify that this isn't about happy teams, because, and you're right, like, at the end of the day, the business needs to perform and we need people to support us to help us do that. And so somebody has to make decisions. Somebody has
Mhm.
to draw the line. Somebody has to set the direction. But where it goes wrong, and where this is all unraveling for a lot of businesses, is that failure to act. So yes, we do have values and mission, But if that's not done fairly, if the executives get to have different behaviors and values to the people on the front line, people are responding to that now. They're no longer willing to go, oh, you got one set of rules, I have to abide by another set of rules. So this fairness, this that we all have the same rules so that we can actually predict, and if you understand a lot more about the brain, that's really important for the brain. I just need to know if I go into work today, I can predict what's going to happen. I know the rules, I know the boundaries, I can do my work, and I know the consequences if I fail to respond that way. But it has to be fair throughout the whole organization. And I think this is the gap that leaders really struggle with right now, is they're really struggling. Do I help my people to thrive, or do I help the business to thrive? And they don't know how to do both together. And
Right.
that's the difference. And that's been the gap. And that's, where we play, is that if leaders can't see both of these things together, if they don't have the data that connects that, then how do we expect them to be able to succeed in their role?
Exactly. And there's nothing worse than being set up for failure, right? So, because that's so demoralizing. And when we look at this, I want to go back to what you teed up beautifully a handful of minutes ago about the masculine and the feminine, right? Like, it seems like it's so esoteric. It seems like it's just fluffy. It's not. It is extremely well defined. It is extremely practical and completely applicable to businesses. And when we talk about this, and I'm just like edifying it for people, right? So when you talk about it, I love how you used, collaboration. That's true. But there's more, right? And I just
Yeah,
want to open it up
always
a little
more.
bit more, always more, right? Because then we'll get into intelligence and we can kind of really build on that. Like, think about this. The masculine is so targeted, so focused, like their strengths are so great to achieve and be goal oriented and to just be, let's just say healthy competition, right? And be producing and actually, selling and closing and all those things, right? So the masculine takes a very like straight charge, and it's beautiful in that. The
Yep.
feminine takes a more holistic approach. The feminine will take a step back and look at the whole 360 picture. The feminine is going to be able to, like draw on some, maybe I'll use the word empathy, like some connective tissue, some emotional quotient, like, and be able to say, that's great that we're achieving this goal, but what is it costing us? Because I'm seeing something over
Mm.
here that straight focus they kind of missed, right? So it's the combination of that beautiful focus with that overall, 360 degrees, with that competition, with that beautiful collaboration and connection, and that production with the creation. There's such space for creation. And when I say that, and I know we probably agree, it's like taking some time. Like, there are times to hard charge and be really focused on the bottom line. And there are other times to take a step back and, really kind of like celebrate the accomplishments and do some team building. And, these are things that people have heard. This is not foreign to them. It's just right now the energies are requiring both in equal measure, not at the same time. There's just that flow of it. And when businesses are not flowing or people are not flowing in both, you're going to start to see more degradation in those areas.
Yeah. And I think what we're seeing is that this demand to have to do both together. I think business has been it's been so accustomed that there are people who are the drivers. Just look at the function. We've got CFO, CEO, they're the drivers, they're pulling the company, driving the company in a direction, but we've got HR and people and culture, L&D, so they've been disconnected.
Yeah.
And what's happened is one gets prioritized over the other. That's why leaders are struggling. Do I look after people, or do I look after, hitting our targets, hitting our goals? So I think we need to move into a space and start creating spaces and leaders need to remember that they need to be building both of these skills. They don't have to be brilliant in both, but the more we can actually use tools to help them understand both, then it's a better decision making.
Right.
It's less burn on their energy, their cognitive energy, because it takes a lot of energy to drive and it takes a lot of energy to care. And it's very difficult to do both together.
Right.
You've got to allow space. Like think of our phones. Always go back to our phones. Or a car. You can't hit the accelerator and the brake at the same time and
Right.
expect to get to your destination in any efficient time. So same with our phone. We can't be looking at multiple things at the same time. You can be checking your messages or and if you do, it drains the battery. And it's exactly the same with us. And we need to
Exactly.
understand that by the demands at the moment that we do all of it, leaders have to do all of it. We as the workers, at our staff, the people that we care about, we're expecting them to do all of it. That's where we're leading to. We're just burning everybody out. We haven't allowed that time and space to recalibrate, to relax, and that's going to affect the ability to be creative and innovative because we don't have the mental capacity to think.
Absolutely. And so here we have the introduction of AI, right? So AI is a beautiful tool in that it can relieve some of that, right? Like because we can say, guess what? For some mundane activities, we're not going to have to waste our brain space for that. That's beautiful. We can, have this tool that be inserted and it can be, another tool set, another toolkit, right? What I'm seeing right now is that it's AI, right? Like,
A
it's like,
bright, shiny star child.
right. And so I was so excited when we started talking. I mean, all of a sudden we were going to start talking about AI, right? So, I mean, it was something that we both, I think, were surprised about and then yet entertained because it is so important to then put it in holistically, right? Like that's the whole point. Like when we
Yes.
talk about this is what my personal thing is like, we're talking about AI like this, and we're not talking about any other type of intelligence. So
No.
that's why I'm so excited to have this segment of the conversation. Like, hello, emotional intelligence. Like, hello, creative intelligence. Yay.
Yes. We Yeah, it's an interesting space. Look, it's an interesting time to be alive. Let's face it, I think it's been an interesting time to be alive over the last 50 years, but
Mhm.
we have to not give away our humanity, not give away the things that make us human, those feminine qualities that we can take a broader view and go, let's look at this in context. What does this mean? We always retain that human intelligence for us to be able to understand that. And we don't hand that over to AI. I think it will be an amazing tool because I think, there does need to be some reprieve from all of the doing and the thinking that has been really amping up over the last 10 to 15 years. And I
Mhm.
think we're really getting to capacity, but it also has the potential to increase that overwhelm right
E-
now.
I know that's the thing, So when we were talking about AI is innovative, it is sexy, it saves time, it saves money, it can help be satisfying some growth, even from micro businesses to big corporations, right? So across the entire business landscape, and that feels really good. It feels like in this time of overwork and exhaustion and stress, right? It's like,
Yeah, it's a
oh,
dopamine hit.
right, like, right. It's like,
Yeah.
yay, I'm gonna get this beautiful, thing that's gonna help me. But yet, right, like we can look at this, and we were talking the other day about like the fact that we're masculinating it. That's not even a verb, but I'm just gonna make it a verb, right? So, by being like, we're gonna be able to take market share, we're gonna be dominant in this area, we're gonna be the ones that are leading, right? So it depends on which tech giant you read about, it's like, well, let's go to the cloud, or no, let's go to this space. And like, people are really trying to get their arms around it. And what are they trying to get their arms around? Data, but not just data that sits idly by, data that gets smarter because it's mined in a certain way, and it's then recategorized and re-indexed in a certain way, right? And we're just talking about data. Like, we're not talking about the imaging and all the other things that generative
Mm.
AI can do. um and I am going to insert something really surprising right now that I remembered that caught my eye a few days ago. I was watching, I don't know, History Channel or something, and they were talking about AI, and they were talking about AI in the military, and they were talking to Air Force pilots in America, and they were talking about testing like literally AI flown fighter jets. And my antenna went way up. We were having this conversation, my antenna went way up, and I thought, I wonder what they're going to say about that. Bar none, from the top to the bottom within the government agency, people were like, no, No, there must be human interaction because, and I'm setting this up to because I think it gives us a good example that's really tangible for our mind to think about. Like if you think about a plane in a military operation that is learning more and more and more about whatever activity it's doing and it's unmanned, that's what data research and data that's sitting out there right now is pretty benign until you make it generate and make it do things and make it, more intelligent than it was before. Who's manning that?
Yeah. And I think that's at the heart of what our conversations have been around is, not being considered in our thinking about what's the long-term view of why we're doing this? What is it
Hmm.
going to achieve? And we bring it in with all of that excitement because it's a bright, new, shining thing. And it's a reward. It's like something else to focus on, something that's exciting. We're going to lean into that. But if we're going to learn anything from the past 100 years that we've come through business, is this, what is the impact on, we have to start thinking of the impact, long-term impact on the people, on our communities, on our environment. Like, what does this mean long-term? And is that what we're wanting to, is that where we're willing to go? And I think the more we're passing stuff on to technology, and that's a classic example, that the greater we're subserving humanity. Like, like
Right.
we're
And
just
that's
going,
when
oh, that doesn't really matter. Technology will save us. We have to save us.
100%, 100%. And this is why I just think the sexy name of artificial intelligence, like we're giving it cachet that we had to drive to create, right? Like so we never would have been able to have gotten here, especially from a data perspective, if we didn't have the internet. If things were not, collated, thrown out there, and we didn't have more information than we've ever had in our lives, right? Like, or anybody, I think there's statistics about generationally someone in one day now can actually access information that somebody would have taken 14 lifetimes to do beforehand, right? So
Yeah.
we have this big amount of data, and then we lay algorithms on top of it, and then we lay generative algorithms on top of it, then we lay some profiling on top of it, then we lay opinion on top of it.
Yeah.
That's the key, right? And then we lay who knows what on top of it. So at what point does the data not even exist anymore and it becomes something else entirely? And so, we're going to talk about takeaways, right? So I still want to stay on the intelligence because for to have that purview and that oversight and to be able to see things in that 360 way, right? Whether you want to call it visionary intelligence or intuitive intelligence or creative intelligence, that's the key,
Yeah.
I think.
I think it is the key. And what I would like to share, because I think this is really important things and something that a lot of people don't know, that how AI currently, and this is why women need to be a part of this whole conversation. This is why we need the feminine energy, because the way AI is being generated at the moment, there is a huge lack of diversity in that field, particularly gender diversity. So AI is often it's being developed with a very masculine framework in a lot of ways. And we need greater diversity and representation of all different types of people with all different types of experience if we're going to develop AI to be truly holistic of and represent and help us to do things that, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to be very politically correct. It's it's only as smart as what we're putting into it. So if it's very much a masculine energy, if it's very much a male-driven field at the moment, because technology is absolutely struggling to keep women in the field,
Mm-hmm.
then we are replicating what we have spent the last 50 years trying to overturn. And that's
Right.
my concern. So
Mm-hmm.
when we're thinking of AI, particularly at this point in time for our businesses and for our life, we have to keep that in mind, is that's why we need to be at the forefront and retain our intelligences to be
Mm-hmm.
able to assess and think about this in the context and not fall into the rabbit hole that we've done with social media, that everything we see is true and correct.
Exactly, right?
So
I mean,
what's fake, what's real, we still have to keep that at the front of mind.
exactly, exactly. So, because when we talk about these intelligences, we've now talked about creative intelligence, but I love when you talk about attentional, and I'll get there first in a moment. Collective intelligence, like what is the culture? What are your values? Like what is your vision? If you're in an organization that doesn't have as I did this work for a very long time, and I used to say you're not living your mission. Your mission is a statement over there, and you're not living it. So my whole thing now is living your soul mission. So I've inserted a little bit of a different aspect to it, but it's still relatively the same. If you can walk into an organization and people really jive with it and they feel like they're part of something bigger and they're part of a team, they get more motivated, they're excited, they are more productive. I mean, there's been millions of studies that have shown that, right? And so you think about that. Right now, we've got this sexy tool that's there, so people are feeling better because they are saving some time and they're saving some energy potentially. But yet, at some point, when does the culture that may be over here with this new disruptive tool, like we want to use it to come together, to lift it up, to be able to make it more cohesive when we're talking about collective intelligence.
Yeah, yeah. It's really important that like I don't even think we've nailed that as humans.
Yeah.
We are still working to be more accepting and more open and more prepared to listen to the other.
Mhm.
We've the last 30, 40 years has very much been about the individual. We
Right.
see what's happening globally. It's very much about the individual. It's very much about me. And, that's why I love ancient wisdom. It's
Yeah.
ironic that they have known much more all along and been trying to tell us. But we've gone on this journey as you do in growth, that you swing, as you said, from one side to the other, and we've swung into this individual and this slow coming back, and it's time to find that middle ground now
Right.
of how, and our whole planet relies on this. Our
Well,
whole existence relies on us getting to that point.
I totally agree with you. And we can gain some solace in that's the Aquarian energy, right? So we've got all this energy that's just showing up through the stars. And it is about you being uniquely you and original and brilliant or genius, or whatever you bring to your magnificence, right? But you're also part of a whole collective, right? But you can be seen like there's Karen. Oh, she is part of this. There's Kim. She is part of this. Not, oh, we're blind to who's there, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I feel is that combination of the masculine and the feminine. Like we're going to be very focused, and we can be goal oriented and driven, and we can be success oriented. We're not maligning that. We're just saying that's not the whole thing, right? This isn't an either or, it's an and, of course.
That's really interesting, because the data that we've seen over the last couple of years coming through is there's this real, there has been this growing sense of that's what people are looking for.
Mhm.
Like when teams aren't functioning as well as they could be, and then they might have all that, they've got great remuneration packages, they've got great perks, they're getting the tools, they're getting some of the training, but what's coming through is people just going, I'm not seen, I'm not heard. We're seeing that very much with the generations, and
Yeah.
particularly in the tech field. And we had a client who's two very diverse, both leaders, two very different cultures that they come from, really understand diversity. They thought they had this nailed. They had practices in, they hired for diversity, physical and ethnic diversity. Yet that was still what came through as being low. They were gutted. It was really heartbreaking
Yeah.
until they understood. So it was coming from the younger generations. And for them, diversity was about, you're not hearing me, you're not seeing me. So I don't feel like I have a purpose and I can grow here because you don't even listen to me. You don't ask my opinion. So if there's a little bit of tip there for leaders, this
Right.
is really important. It's driving your workforce decisions right now.
Hmm.
It's not just about their career. It's not about what they know and their skills. It's, do you hear me? Do I have an input here? And does that give me a sense of purpose that I'm contributing to something bigger than me? So it's really interesting that you spoke about that, because it's been coming through for the last couple of years.
And it's the next 20 years. It's not going away. So, it's here to stay. So if we think about that, that's two decades. That's almost a generation. So we, as leaders, want to be really informed about that, right? So I'm just monitoring the time here, and I just want to just speak to the attentional intelligence, because this is what you're talking about. I love this when you brought this to my attention. That leaning in, that active listening, that understanding and appreciating the nuances, what's said and what's not said. When I was doing my work in corporate America, I would walk in with a blank portfolio, and I would walk into a boardroom and I would say, I'm here to listen. I got dinged so much, Karren. Like, we were a little
Wow.
boutique firm. Oh yeah, we were going against all the big guys and whatever. They had their presentations and all the things, and I'm like, you don't even know what anybody wants. So everybody was upset. All the men. I'm just gonna say it. I was mostly the only woman in there, and all the men would be all like, "Rrr," and I would say, just wait, talk to me. Just talk to me. Within 5 minutes, based on the questions that I was asking, based on how I was leading the conversation, what they thought they wanted was not what they actually, needed. And yes, give them what they want, then you can give them what they need. But no, this was even more than that. You don't need an extra strategy. You actually need your organization rebuilt over here. You needed some flattening. You need a better communication, like whatever that was. I mean, I did executive leadership for a long time. And I just was bringing in a pen and a portfolio, blank paper, and we walked out with the clients every single time.
Wow. Yeah, it's and look, this isn't a term that I've created, so I'll give credit to Linda Ray, who created the attentional intelligence, and but it is profound, because I think we focus so much on emotional intelligence over the last 30 years, and it's been very valuable, and I think it's brilliant, but it only does part of the work, as all of these things do. All of these
Mm-hmm.
things are not a panacea, or, oh, this is what we have to get to. Even when we're talking about psychological safety, it's not a panacea. You don't get there, it's done, and oh my God, we're forever fixed. So we've got emotional intelligence. We have social intelligence, which, if we don't understand how to behave in a boardroom, how to behave at the executive level, how to behave in a team authentically, which is coming through a lot more now in the data, then we will struggle as a leader. But the
Mm-hmm.
key piece, and particularly over the last 30 years with the rise of technology, the key piece, attentional intelligence, because people are so consumed by their phones, like in meetings now, they're all on their computers, typing in on their laptops, the notes. We're not looking at each other. And
Right.
every single day we have micro cues in our facial expressions, in our how we shift in our chair. Like, do we lean in? Do we lean out? Like, these things that marketers and salespeople are grow like this is the first things that they learn, is to pick up those micro cues so that
Right.
they can see the opportunity that's before them. Leaders who don't have the capability to do that, they're missing the pinnacle moments that they have an opportunity to stop a small issue becoming something that drives people out the door.
Right. I totally agree with you. I 100% do. And, because we can talk about active listening and, I'm just doing the air quotes because that's a term that people use, right? But knowing something and doing it are two different things, right? Like, so, even here now, yes, I am facilitating. So I'm monitoring, the time, and I'm monitoring, our agenda, but yet I'm captivated by what you're saying. And I need to be, because I won't be able to pick up your cues and be able to lead the discussion or facilitate with you, and we wouldn't be able to have an active dialogue. It would be stilted. It would be somewhat awkward. The segue would be, well, where did they just go, because I had to take a right turn, right? Well,
Yeah.
think about that when you're in a sales call. Think about that when you are, and here's my thing with, sorry, I am gonna make a segue, and it's not going to be it is going to be a little bit awkward, but I tell my leaders, and I tell, now I'm in the entrepreneurial space, but I was in the corporate world for a really long time. Your team are your clients. Like,
Yes.
right, like
Yes.
100%. And when I say that, people will, like, you're in this world, right? Sometimes I'll get the, like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't think of that before. Whatever. That's okay. It could be something that's a relatively new philosophy. But when you think about it like that, it makes so much sense because you're spending money and time on orientation. You're spending money and time on getting people to do some things, right? So when I say to people when they start with me, I'm like, you're going to be as helpful as a 4-year-old for a handful of time, and then you're going to be majorly helpful, right? So I'm going to pour into you for a big bit of time, and then we're going to start shifting that, and then you're going to be pouring into me, right? Or the organization, right? So just even that, setting people up for that difference in the way that it's going to be happening after a certain amount of time, whatever that is, could be handful of weeks or months. And people are like, oh, okay, now I get it. The mind needs to have some comfort, some knowledge, some planning, some expectation, right? And I am mindful of us doing our job and talking about AI and the 5 tools. But hopefully I'm going to set this up right, because when you were talking about attentional intelligence, I mean, you and I could spend an entire hour on that, I think.
Yeah. I think it's a
We do
let's
know
come
that.
back to the intelligence as another time because it is quite fascinating and it's important.
It is important. And when you were talking out, because energetically I can feel things, right? I was feeling as if, and this does set us up beautifully for the 5 tool takeaways, like AI can come in and be a beautiful lift for all the other intelligences,
It
right?
could do, yes.
Right? Like, wouldn't that be great if you had that collective and that social, emotional, and the attentional, and then the visionary or creative, however you want to say that, and then AI just came in and said, "Hey, I'm helping you. I'm helping you out. I'm going to
Yeah.
fit beautifully into your framework and your culture, and we're going to spend as much time as we should on this, and we're going to boost everybody up." Wouldn't that be fabulous?
Yeah. And I think we're seeing a lot of those tools coming through, with these AI tools that can, record our meeting, translate that, put it into notes. So we can actually start spending more time looking at the person on the screen. And I think what I've seen for myself, because I like to connect energetically with people. So for me, when people are on their phone or their device or whatever, it affects me a lot. Like for me, it's
Mm.
always like it feels disrespectful to me, and you've got to change your thinking and go, well, no, they're taking notes. But because I can't energetically connect with them, I can't build a trust bridge. And I think for leaders to understand that, you have to energetically connect with your people so you can build the trust bridge. Because if there's no trust, that and that's a whole other conversation in and of
Yeah.
itself, the different ways of trust. But your people need to know that you trust them to be able to do their job. You need to know that you can trust your people to do their work and to be honest and you need that bond. So yeah, I think there's some great tools that will help that. But this attentional intelligence, we as leaders should never lose that. It's the one thing that we should always be mindful of and building, because it does take time to build. You don't get there straight away. Those skills just keep on growing, growing, growing. And they are the things that create the opportunities for your business, for your department, the creative, the innovative opportunities. Because as you pay attention, just as you pay attention to your clients, you start to pay attention to the different things that may not be working as well, that you have opportunities to improve upon.
Which is amazing. So I'm going to go in a little bit different kind of spec, like that we kind of specced out for those 5 takeaways, because this one also goes to the, because you talked about trust, to that authority, right? So I'm going to jump to the real versus fake, right? So because that's something. So when we're thinking about AI, we are all excited about the innovations and the time saving and all the things, and we're not negating that, we're not refuting that. What we're talking about is putting it inside of a container that's reasonable, that's helpful, that's actually innovative in and of itself, potentially, right? So if you think, like I always think of, I used to work at Oracle, data, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you have a bunch of data out there and you've set up, we'll get to the whole strategic framework and all the things, but and you've set it up, and yet you are misaligned with what your intention is for the data or how you're using the data. Because remember, this is data manipulation. This isn't data that's benign. This is data that is actually working itself and then building itself towards a goal, right? And it's ever generating. So at what point does it then become, well, wait a minute, is this even true? Is this real? Does this have anything to do with anything? That's a that's a huge, huge question.
That is a huge question. And that feeds, directly into that attentional intelligence, the
Mm-hmm.
ability to, even if it's a gut feeling, to just get that gut feeling and go, this, I need to pay some attention here. We need to make sure this is what we think it is, or, is there something else at play here? So
Absolutely, absolutely. Because all the things that I read, because I did some homework for this conversation, Karen,
ah,
right? So yay. So I
oh,
got
that's
some
great.
large organizational, kind of perspective on AI because I have a micro and a solopreneur perspective for it, right? So I wanted to be able to dance in this space intelligently. Intelligently. What did I do? I read. Okay. So so I got trusted sources though. I did not go on the internet. So what I read, like hands down, it was strategy. And it makes so much sense when you think about it, but yet you can just ride the wave of something and just be swept up, right? So if you strategically, no matter what size organization you're in, you strategically say, okay, here's the way I'm going to use AI. This is how it's going to fit in. This is how it's aligned with my values, right? This is how it aligns with the vision. This is how it can support us from a mission perspective. Like that's the highest level. But then you go into the teams and you say, okay, this is how we can work it. But I'm seeing it from a micro perspective. Again, I'm working with companies that have 1 to 10 employees, right? Like we're baby companies over here. But I think that we can see things a lot quicker. And I've seen things out there that have been shocking, let's just say that, where people are punching way above their weight, when you're looking to hire support in some area, right? So, an example that I have is that a woman came to me and I just asked her to help me with social media, a very administrative role. She was working with one of my clients. We're going to share her. So she knew a lot of things. She didn't really talk to me when I was, giving her information. She was looking away at her computer doing this. And I gave her the benefit of the doubt, my friend. I did gave her the benefit of the doubt saying she's gathering notes. That's okay. But she came back with, I'm looking for execution. She came back with a diagnostic of my marketing presence online and a brand strategy and yet like didn't ask me a single question about that, didn't have anything to say about that. Well, she literally, what she did was she just put a diagnostic tool out there and she just said diagnose and then just come up with some report. And I'm just going to forward that. Inauthentic, right? And so for me, if I didn't have that overall, like, what am I looking for? What do I need? What do I know that I need? What my brand voice is really important to me, right? I am a very unique individual in what I do. And so it didn't have anything to do with that. What if I had less experience? What if I had less purview? What if I were less attuned to what who I am and what I want, what my goals are? I may have thought, oh my gosh, I got a great resource here for so much less money, and it's going to be wonderful to bring her into my organization. That could have happened.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. My head's going because I'm thinking about this at, in bigger organizations and what we've been talking through this with regards to, change, how difficult it is to change, how difficult it can be to take on board somebody else's ideas because it means we have to change our own mind. And but once again, the ability to build the trust and a psychologically safe culture is actually going to be really powerful for leaders, particularly in these older generations, because I think sometimes the younger generations are much more attuned to this BS and can flag it.
Yeah,
Like we keep talking about the leaders and what they need to do, and they need to have these intelligences. These intelligences can be harnessed by the people in your team. Like that's the beauty of the collaborative, supportive
right.
network, because when you care about your people, they naturally want to care and protect you.
Exactly. No,
So it's
exactly,
actually an
right?
insurance policy as a leader that you've got that. You just need to help drive that strategy and get everything out of their way so they can perform.
Right.
And you'll have this collective intelligence to be able to understand, yeah, are people who are coming to you legitimate, or are they just chucking it into ChatGPT and handing you something that you could have done yourself?
Right. I know. Yeah. If I had wanted that, if I'd asked for that, right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
And does it
But they,
really address, yeah, what you're
but
looking for?
it's still relatively new. So there are going to be some, sliding around of things until we sort ourselves, until we start seeing these things and they become more familiar, right? But if you're thinking about it, regardless of the size of the organization, it does require, it's just like implementing a brand new system. I used to work at Oracle. I know what it takes. You want to do discovery, you want to do some strategy, you want to see how it fits in. You want to then train people, you want to test it, you want to, you want to really like make sure it fits in with what your needs are, right? So, I mean, I've seen very poor system implementations and I've headed very good ones, right? So that's what I want people to take away from this conversation, among other things, is that this is a tool, but it's just like implementing a system. It's not just going to slide in and you're like, great, it's going to take care of some things. No, this is an approach. It's a system. It can be, think about the data servers that whether they go cloud and they're renting space, or that it's their own. And so you have to look at privacy, you need to look at intellectual property, trade secret, you need to look at third party risk, you need to look at compliance. I mean, think of a financial system, right? A
Yeah.
financial company, think of a bank,
Oh
right?
my
Like
God.
think
Yeah.
think of
It's
attorneys. I mean,
yeah.
doctors, right? So, we're staying kind of corporate in our conversation, but if you widen that lens and you say, here in America, we have HIPAA compliance, it's all about privacy, right? So, for me, I don't even use translation software that I have HIPAA compliance translation software. Why do I have that? Because I do very intimate work with my clients, and I never, ever, ever want, if I give them a recording and they say, oh, gee, can you transcribe that for me? I don't ever want a piece of that to be known to anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's such it's we need to be considered. And what I was just thinking of
Yeah.
there was, we're talking about AI, and then you got attentional intelligence. So it's like you need to use AI
Oh,
for
right.
AI.
Right. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that. I love
We
that.
need to remember we have to be paying attention. And yes, it's a tool. And we've seen this with so many productivity tools at the moment. Like
Mhm.
organizations are transforming and bringing in all these productivity tools. But there's a learning curve, which means it reduces productivity, and people tend to get lost in the technology, the fun of the technology.
Right.
And we need to be mindful of that, that we're just not getting lost in the fun of the technology. And that becomes an excuse that why we can't hit targets. Like at the end of the day,
Right.
how our jobs, our well-being, it all depends on the ability of the organization to function healthily and to thrive as well. So we need to, these things go hand in hand. And yeah, I think it's an exciting time. I'm really looking forward to what's going to come through with AI. But I do think there's a very fundamental role for leaders to just be very mindful of supporting the organization to do that in a really responsible way.
Yeah, and I think when we talked about the tools, because I do want to, wrap up and deliver what we had promised to deliver, I did say the number five, right? So I just want to remind people we've
Yeah.
talked about them, but we haven't done it in a very linear fashion, which is fine because dialogue shouldn't work like that anyway, right? So if you're thinking about, it's so interesting because these do line up, and I just realized it just now, like lines up with the skill set of a leader. Like it's like have the vision and be really strategic about it, right? So those are like the first thing. Like, okay, we have the vision. We are gonna, yes or no, we're gonna use AI. We're not gonna use AI. Yes or no, we're gonna use AI in this way. We're gonna use it in that way. Whatever. So you gain the vision of that, and then you set up the strategy for it, right? So you create that framework. You're gonna create the plan. You're gonna create the testing. You're gonna create the integration. You're gonna create the training. You're gonna create the revisiting so that you can do the optimization and whatnot,
Yeah.
right?
We're going to
You're not
identify the risks. I think that's,
identify the risks.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
100%. And then I love what you had said, the human element. you're not going to forget about the people, right? So, a leader isn't just leading the work, the leader is leading the people, right? So there's that beautiful human element. And when we talked about all the intelligences, I love like thinking about AI supporting to elevate them. People don't have to do so many of the mundane things. They can get some lift out of that, oh, just the sheer volume of data and information that's out there and meetings that we have and whatnot. So getting any help with that is just wonderful, because then they can start being heard. They can start having ideas exchanged. They can start, communicating things and feeling like they're part of the overall solution. And then if we go and we talk about that authority, like real versus fake, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. Being that's going to be really important. And I think, we've, as I said, we've seen on social media. I think for any of us to realize that that's going to happen with AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, there's a learning curve to all of this. And I think when we're talking about this human element, I want everyone, I really want everyone to be mindful. None of this is going to happen quickly. Yet, as organizations bring this stuff in, they often demand that it's a very quick adoption. Hence why so many change projects fail, because they actually haven't even looked at the resilience of the humans that are in there to be able to take this on board and add yet another layer on top of so many other layers that they're focusing on. So, when they're that will absolutely impact whether AI that's adopted is real or fake, because as people become overwhelmed, they'll just make a decision. They won't actually spend time investigating and understanding this. Back to the attentional intelligence.
Right.
So there's going to be a lot of expectations, and we need to be doing better in organizations to allow space to think and understand and process and take that on board. So yeah, the human element, that's where I'm always at.
I
Please
know.
protect the humans.
I know. I love that. I love that. And I'm there too. And also with that holistic approach, right? Like take that 360 view and then see where AI can help elevate you. So that if I had a bottom line, our whole conversation, I would do it in one sentence. How can AI elevate you and your business? And that should be the litmus.
It should be. Can I just add something else to that?
Sure. You can
Because
have a bottom line too. Yeah.
yeah, we're gone over, and I really apologize, but I want to bring it back to what we started with. The masculine and the feminine energies
Hmm.
is, when you ask that question, the masculine will go, oh, we've got revenue uptake, we're going to get new markets, like we have to do this, we have to do it now, it's really important. And we need to be given that very considered approach to a more holistic understanding of the opportunities and the well-being. So what are the risks that we have if we drive so hard to actually implement and integrate that too quickly?
Right. Because we're not really integrating it. We're not, right? If it's just this, then we're just, I don't know, we're just mashing things around, right? Like
Feel like we're
with really
sticking
intelligent.
band-aids on broken limbs.
Right? Yeah, no, and that's pretty terrible. So, so I have adored this conversation with you. So if people want to, follow you or, get in touch with you, how would they do that? I mean, we can do that here on LinkedIn, but we can make sure we go back in the comments and we can just, leave some links if we want to do that, right? Because obviously Karen
Yes.
has lots of experience, and if anybody wants to get in touch with her, we want to make a way to do that. And then always with me too, you can follow me here.
Yeah. So I think my details are on the event page. So absolutely reach out through LinkedIn. Happy to have conversations. Conductor recognized in Boeing as being a next generation digital solution, because we are able to link this and look at this in a more holistic middle ground approach, that performance is really important, but so are your people, and they need to rise together. And I think that's going to become increasingly more important as AI comes, as we've been discussing. So anybody who's interested, we work large, small, and medium-sized organizations, and it's really about how do we strengthen leadership? So we're not burning them out. We're not
Right.
losing them in the process because they just don't have the knowledge or the insights. They haven't got the data because our data's disconnected. We've got so much of it. They don't have the data to be able to understand what are the very small micro things that they should be paying attention to that can make a world of difference to their organization's bottom line.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Yeah.
So everybody, thank you so much for being here. We weren't able to really go in and read comments or whatever, but we will make sure that we do that, post live. But I'm always thrilled to host. I love hosting people that have expertise that is outside my realm, or even like the Venn diagram, kind of, merges a little bit. And we were fascinated with each other, just a little behind the scenes. And we said we must have this conversation. And I think we're going to have many more. So thank everybody for being here and for all of your attention.